My daughter-in-law opened the door, looked past my wet bags, and said, "There's no room for you here." I felt the sting and chose steadiness. Years of raising a son taught me that dignity is louder than pleading. That night, I opened my late husband's ledger, found a policy number, and by morning I was on the phone gathering timestamps and calmly asking to see the claim dashboard. What happened next wasn't shouting, it was paper boundaries, and one careful step after another, and this story is only just beginning. Before I continue, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. The streets in Spring Klein still glistened from the flood, but Joranne's cul-de-sac looked camera-ready. Porch lights floated on wet pavement like halos, and the HOA signs promised order as if water ever asked permission. I eased my old sedan between trimmed hedges, 2 soggy bags on the seat phone at 9%, and the smell of bleach and river mud clinging to my coat. The wipers clicked twice. I silenced them. On the porch, I set my muddy boots beside their white shoe rack, like a guest who remembered her manners. The rain had thinned to a pencil-fine drizzle. I pressed the bell. Inside, a soft chime lit the console screen, then a small moon icon, silence notifications. The house breathed lights on a timer diffuser mist, sweet as eucalyptus, but it did not welcome me. I fogged the glass, counted to 5, waited. No steps. Avery opened the door, and her eyes went first to the bags, then to the waterline on my coat. Behind her, Joranne hovered with his hands tucked into his pockets, like a boy waiting out a storm. I said as evenly as I could that the house had taken on 3 feet, that I only needed a few nights. Avery shook her head once. "No room for you here," she said. "Not unkind, just final." She angled the door to me like a shield. Joranne watched the rug. I lifted my chin and saved my breath. Avery stepped aside just enough to pull a folder from the entry console. Out came a crisp sheet with boxes and lines. House rules, guest intake, noise hours, laundry schedule, refrigerator zones labeled A and B. At the bottom, a field in bold relationship to host other. Fresh toner scent, edges sharp, the bureaucrat's perfume of control. The dryer hummed somewhere, the engine room of a perfect life. I took the pen she offered steady and read every line again, once more. I drew a single line through other and wrote mother in neat block letters that matched my pulse. The pen whispered across the glossy paper. I slid it back without apology. Joranne's eyes flickered, a boy's signal for change he didn't dare voice. Avery's jaw tightened as if a hinge had worn out. My name, my role restored by ink and backbone. We stood long enough to hear the ice maker cough. Nothing else moved. I didn't explain. I'd paid for explanations already. I stood tall. She gestured past a living room arranged like a show set cream throws, folded like origami coffee table stacked with curated books, on wellness a candle labeled Sanctuary. She suggested an extended stay near the mall, clean, safe kitchenettes. Joranne added that they worked long hours. I read the room. They'd made their choice. I nodded. Nodding spends less of a person than begging. The vent warmed my cuffs. Those blankets would never carry my name. Again. In the kitchen, I moved the way mothers do, muscle memory older than the appliances. I brewed coffee for 3. The drip ticked warm and familiar, a small normal. 2 cups were lifted, sipped, then tipped into the sink without comment. Mine cooled untouched on the counter, a little dark mirror. I rinsed it and slid it back onto the rack. The dishwasher sighed. The window held a fence and clearing sky. I left no ring, no note. Dignity is trace you refuse. I carried my bags back through the breathing house and into the wet quiet of the driveway. In the sedan, the wipers squeaked on slow metronome of second chances. Maps showed me a nearby Walmart. I pictured fluorescent safety and a bathroom with paper towels. I counted the cash I had measured my pride and chose safety over begging. I set the defroster low-watched fog peel from glass in circles. A mother's move is a lot with lights, and no questions now. Security rolled by slow and polite and told me they didn't allow overnights, not since the storms brought too many people to hide in cars. I nodded, moved to the edge of the lot beneath a light. A folded church flyer surfaced from the glove box. My life lately was paperwork and faith, both soft until you needed them to be strong. The rain thinned to mist that made halos around the lamps. I loosened my grip, counted to 10, and let the engine tick, waited. I reached for Emmett's old ledger, the one with grocery tallies and oil change dates in his square hand. Between a faded receipt and a phone number was a stapled scan policy number, agent notes initials I recognized as mine. My breath steadied. This was not just grief. It was a trail of ink I could follow back to myself. I traced the numbers with my fingertip like testing a scar that tells story underneath. I had standing. Proof. The ledger answered me. I bookmarked the number for morning. The battery icon was a sliver of red. I rehearsed what I would say, named insured date of loss waterline 3 feet high in my hallway photos on a dead phone. I pictured the agent hearing my voice and writing my name the way I had written it, clear, and claiming me back. The night settled into the car like a blanket. I repeated the policy number until it felt like prayer and password both. Morning would find me ready before I let sleep take me. I texted Joranne tomorrow I'll need the papers I supposedly signed. No apology, no emoji, no soft landing. The dome light clicked off. I pressed Emmett's ledger to my chest the way you keep a photograph from slipping away and let the rain say what I wouldn't. I could be turned from a door and still keep my name. I did not beg policy to remember me. By morning, that number would dial more than a claim. It would call me back. I woke in the soft orange of a parking lot. Light my breath, fogging the windshield in slow ovals. The rain had gentled to a mist that beaded on the glass and turned the edges of the world to lace. I stretched my fingers to test the ache in them and counted what could be counted. The folded cash in my wallet, the 2 damp bags on the passenger seat, and the ledger I'd slept with like a book of prayer. Dignity, too, is a thing you can hold if you keep both hands on it. The phone blinked awake at 9%, a red little warning that fit the morning. I mapped the nearest McDonald's opening at 6, pictured the corner table with a wall outlet, planned the order. 1 small coffee, 1 extra napkin, 1 chair that let me see the door. If I moved like a person with a plan, I would be 1. I would sip charge to 20% and make the call that might give my name back to me. At 6:02, I walked in carrying my bags the way other women carry purses. The floor smelled like mop water and syrup. A teenager in a visor handed me the coffee and slid a handful of napkins across with a kind smile that didn't pry. I thanked her, claimed the corner, and plugged in. Emmett's ledger became a desk on my lap, the paper gone wavy from the flood, the ink still stubborn where his hand had once pressed hard on numbers that kept our lives balanced. Between grocery lists and phone numbers, a stapled scan waited like an old friend who had kept their word. Policy number. Carrier's main line. The handwritten name, Holloway. I took a photo for backup and read the digits aloud until they settled in my mouth. Outside, the sky lifted from pewter to a shy gray, and I felt my spine rise with it. Paperwork was not romance, but it was rescue if you knew how to row. At 7:12, with the battery blinking its way past 20, I dialed. Maura Holloway. A woman answered, brisk and warm, like a nurse, who knows how to move a line without losing a person. I told her my name, the address on Willow Bend, the date the water came in the last 4 she needed to check me against the world. My voice stayed steady. I did not add apology where facts already carried their own weight. I described the brown tide mark in my hallway, the sockets that hissed the refrigerator that died standing up. I told her I had never filed a proof of loss, that my hands had been busy sweeping and saving and then steering to a house where the doorbell did not ring. Maura was quiet the right amount of time. Silence like that is a yes in its own way. It means a mind is working beside you, not against you. Last night, a guard told me policy when he asked me to move along. I said, half laughing at the way one word can bruise or bandage depending on who holds it. Then let's use the right policy today, she said. I smiled without showing any teeth. A small thing moved in me the way a knot loosens under warm water. Words were going to serve me this time, not stop me. Maura gave me a list a woman can live by timestamped photos of every room Red Cross, receipts ID, and a copy of the deed, a contents list written, while the memory was still damp and readiness for the carrier's system check that would make a number stand still beside my name. "We'll flag your file," she added as named, insured disputing prior submission. A sentence like that is the sound of a door unlatching. "Can you stay reachable at a safe address today?" she asked. "I can." The church receptionist answered on the first ring, her voice warm as a shawl. She said I could list their office for mail through the week and that the copier took quarters. She told me the bathrooms were open to anyone who asked like a neighbor. I wrote down the hours in my notebook and underlined them once. I drove to the church lot first, wanting my feet to learn that ground. Inside, a volunteer in a denim jacket pointed me to a table of donated toiletries and said, "Take what you need, sugar." I chose a travel-size soap and a comb, nothing more. In the restroom, I washed my face, then took pictures of the water line on my shoes, the frayed hem of my jeans, the page in the ledger where Emmett had circled the premium in blue. Evidence has a way of steadying your hands when apologies would only waste breath. "Okay," texted my son with hands that did not shake. "Tomorrow I'll need copies of everything you say I signed. I'll pick them up. Please don't alter or discard. No adjectives, no weather, no history. Just a record on a thread where truth can hold." The 3 dots bubbled, stopped, bubbled again, then nothing. That too is an answer. Some people speak most clearly by not sending. Back at the corner table, I stacked my proofs like bread coffee receipt, photo of the ledger page, the church's hours, Maura's name, and felt the world tilt a millimeter in my favor. A mother learns to trust small tilts. They are how bicycles and boys stay upright. I slid the ledger into my bag, powered the phone down to save its good work, and stood. When I stepped outside, the clouds had opened a narrow seam, and light threaded itself through the day, like gold floss. I lifted my face to it and let the warmth name me present. I saved Maura under Maura policy, the dash a hinge between fear and action, and walked toward the car with paperwork in one hand and my back in the other. By noon, a single email header would prove someone filed my grief while I slept in a car. The church office smelled like paper and lemon cleaner. I sat at a spare desk beneath a corkboard of bake sale flyers and clicked refresh on my inbox. Maura's note to the carrier was still marked pending a gray dot that looked like it might never turn green. I checked spam on habit the way a mother checks locks twice. That was when a subject line blinked up from the sludge like a fish scale catching light. Proof of loss received, it read. I opened the email and scrolled to the header, the fine print that bosses skim and secretaries memorize. Timestamp 12:07 p.m. yesterday. Not the hour a guard told me no overnight that came after dark, but the same day I looped parking lots to avoid a ticket. I printed the page with full headers and watched the laser warm line by line until the paper slid out warm and undeniable into my hand. I set the sheet beside my McDonald's receipt still crinkled from my pocket. 6:13 a.m. small coffee, 1.29 before tax. My phone pinged a bank text showing the 218 charge and the location ID. In another photo, the parking lot lamp made a halo on my windshield. Ordinary proof, the kind no one thinks to keep until they need their name, stitched back onto its own coat. On speaker, Maura's voice filled the quiet office. "Someone filed in your name," she said, not asking, stating. 2 tracks, Laci. First contest immediately with the metadata. Second stay ready for re-inspection so the facts lock in. I looked at the warm printout and the coffee receipt and said both. She didn't praise me. She didn't need to. "Good," she said. "Then let's build your packet." I started small and steady. Red Cross intake slip photographed with today's Chronicle folded to show the date. Church visitor log, the receptionist wrote the time I walked in and initialed the line. I took a picture and returned the pen. Phone location history screen capped and printed before the app could decide privacy meant forgetting my truth. I moved like a clerk who had learned that every kindness needed a paper trail. The photo from their porch hurt in a clean way. I enlarged it on my phone, my muddy shoes lined up next to their white rack. The welcome mat spelled in perfect loops, The doorbell with its tiny moon of notifications, silenced. I pulled the EXIF details and printed them too. A mother can stand a lot, but she keeps the dates. Across the street, Jonelle texted a link from her doorbell camera. 12 seconds me on their step, shoulders squared, hands folded over two miserly bags, a waver of rain, the outline of Joran behind frosted glass. I saved the clip, generated a hash, and emailed it to Maura with a single line. "This is my Tuesday." She replied with a thumbs-up emoji, and beneath it, "Perfect." I opened my small black notebook and wrote a sentence at the top of a fresh page. "Policy isn't a wall, it's a promise." Last night, a rent-a-guard used the word to send me moving along. This morning, Maura used the same word to open a door. The difference wasn't grammar, it was whether I counted as people. I texted my son. "Tomorrow, copies of anything bearing my signature. Originals preserved. Do not discard or amend. I'll come at 5. I watched the 3 dots appear and vanish. No apology arrived. That was fine. Paper before contrition, truth before theatrics. On the drive back to the church, a sponsored post surfaced from Avery's account, cued and polished a sunlit living room, her bare feet tucked under a throw, captioned, "Protecting our peace starts at the door." I screenshot the image and the platform's timestamp, filed it beside the porch photo, and let the bile settle into something less messy motive. The receptionist showed me how to merge images into a single PDF. We named it Flood Claim Witness Day 2. I added the email header first, then receipts, location logs, photos, and the doorbell clips hash string with the original file on a labeled thumb drive. Maura called back as the copier murmured. "Carrier opened a named insured dispute ticket," she said. "Adjuster will be notified. Keep your phone charged. And Laci, yes, keep breathing. Slow wins this." I stacked the packet until it felt like a slim book. The printer hummed for the next run, a warm, patient animal at my elbow. Outside, the clouds thinned to gauze, letting through a cautious light. I tucked Emmett's ledger into my bag and slid the PDF onto the drive. At 5 o'clock, I would stand in their doorway and ask to see the claim dashboard. If someone filed my loss in the dark, I would flip on the light over their keyboard. I did one more pass, like checking windows before a storm. I penciled page numbers 1 of 12, 2 of 12, so any shuffle would show. Originals in a clear sleeve, copies in a manila folder. Jonelle said, "Use my driveway at 5. I asked if I could list her as a witness. Say I saw you there. I wrote a short script greet, ask for copies, request the claim portal, photograph the screen without touching their mouse. If they refused, I would text a curbside summary, plain and dated. Before leaving, I made a card, my name, the property address, the claim number in bold, Maura's number beneath. On the back, one line, I am the named insured. One card in my wallet, one in the glove box beside Emmett's ledger. At 4:40, I parked where I could see their street. Phone charged. The packet on the passenger seat waited like a steady hand. Today I gathered facts. I parked along their curb at 5, on the nose the same silver sedan that hauled what was left of my week. 2 paper folders rode shotgun, one labeled evidence, one labeled home. Porch lights glowed in the drizzle. Sprinklers ticked in their arc. I texted, "I'm at the door, watched the dots appear and vanish." I walked up anyway. Inside the living room looked staged for a realtor's brochure. White throws folded into triangles, coffee table books, aligned like rulers, a candle centered but unlit. I didn't perch. I stood. Joran hovered with a host's smile that missed his eyes. "Water?" he asked. "Files," I answered. I kept my hands at my sides so he wouldn't mistake patience for permission. Avery arrived in soft linen and leadership tone. "It's already submitted," she said, palms low as if landing a plane. "We handled it for you." I met her ease with mine. "Then you can show me where you handled it." The sentence landed between us and stayed. We moved to the study, the house's brain-pale desk, built-ins by color, and iMac asleep beneath a lake at dawn. Joran tapped the spacebar. The wake chime sounded. "Open the claim portal," I said. He glanced at Avery. She nodded, as if authorizing access to my own life. He clicked. The dashboard loaded to a soothing blue. Status pending disbursement. Beneath that, submitted by authorized filer. A small click of certainty in my chest, like a seatbelt catching. I silenced my phone, lifted it, and said, "Hold it still." Joranne's hand flattened on the mouse. Avery's mouth made a line. I shot the first frame full screen with claim number and the second on the payments tab, where an amount waited behind a gray box that read, "Processing." "Now the forms I supposedly signed," I said. "Originals." Avery smiled without light. "We can email. I'll pick up copies," I said, "but tonight I'll take PDFs." She began a sentence about convenience. I didn't feed it. Silence is a tool if you let it work. Joranne tried a softer pitch. "Mom, this is simpler." I looked at the glowing screen. Simplicity is not consent. The room absorbed the sentence the way staged rooms do, without disagreeing, without helping. My phone buzzed. A scheduled post rolled live from Avery's account, a wide shot of this room captioned, "Our Sanctuary," with a timestamp that matched the minute my name sat as authorized. I captured the post and locked the screen. Performance had announced itself on cue. Back in the living room, I asked for a manila envelope. Joranne fetched one. I slid in copies of my driver's license and the deed, both printed at the church office. "For your files," I said. "Tonight I'll need mine." Avery studied the envelope like it might bite. "We just wanted to help," she said. "Then help by making room for the facts," I replied. No one sat. We stood in our assigned places, then beside surfaces they controlled me beneath a light I hadn't turned on. From now on, I said, even any mail about my loss comes to me. Avery's jaw shifted. Joranne watched the floorboards as if they held a script. I lifted my folders and ended the meeting myself. The door clicked shut behind me as gently as a librarian closing a book. At the curb, the sprinklers shut off with a sigh. I slid into the driver's seat and opened the photos. The dashboard shots were clean claim number status, the authorized filer tag, the payments tab with its gray square. I filed them into a new album named Claim Inside House, then duplicated the set to my cloud and a thumb drive in the glove box. If a thing matters, keep it twice. I called Maura from the curb. "Screenshots obtained," I said when she answered. "Clear as a bell." "Good," she said. "Tomorrow we chase the paper any power of attorney notarized authorizations, escrow notes. If a signature spoke for you, the notary's book will remember your name." I pictured the ledger at the county clerk's counter, the weight of it the way ink sits raised on good paper. 9 a.m., I said. Laci Maura added, "Don't argue tonight. Document. Let silence work." "Already doing that," I said, and we hung up. I watched the house hold its shape against the dim sky, prettier than truth, sealed like a jar. My folders rode shotgun. My hands found the wheel. I pulled away with the patience of someone who has the page she came for. At a red light, I reviewed the day's chain. The church copier warming metadata that didn't blink, Jonelle's 12-second doorbell clip of me on their porch, with my bags, the sanctuary post going live, while I stood 3 feet off that frame. None of it loud, all of it exact. By the time the sky turned from pewter to ink, I was parked in the same safe lot as last night, under the same orange light that keeps company. I propped the envelope against the steering wheel, wrote tomorrow's list on the back adjuster, notary, escrow, and tucked it into the evidence folder. I texted Maura one last line, ready for the book to tell the truth. Then I texted Joranne. "I'll stop by at 8 for the PDFs and any mail addressed to me. Please set them aside. Do not alter or discard." I didn't wait for dots. I powered the phone down to save my charge, slipped Emmett's ledger on top of the folders, and leaned back. The lot hummed its neutral music tires on wet asphalt, a cart corral yawning. I let the quiet do what it does best, sort settle point. When it finished, it aimed me toward morning. Okay. The county annex smelled like paper warmed by machines and old air conditioning. I parked beneath a live oak that had survived more storms than any of us and carried a folder I'd labeled in thick black pen ID deed copy policy printouts, screenshots. The morning was bright the way Houston gets after a front scrubs the sky honest light, no place for smudges to hide. Inside, a red ticket slid from the dispenser. I took a seat between a couple applying for a marriage license and a man with a stack of permits. One future being built, one inspected. Mine reclaimed. When my number flashed, I stepped to the glass and kept my voice level. I need to verify a power of attorney that was used for an insurance claim. The clerk, a woman with practical hair and no appetite for drama, nodded once and pointed me to notary services. I thanked her. I have learned that courtesy is a kind of key. It doesn't open every door, but it keeps people from closing them in your face. The notary office had the hushed focus of a library. A placard read Linda Savos. Linda's desk was neat without being fussy, a lined pad at 12 o'clock, a black pen square to its edge. I slid the scan across. I'm told this was executed last week. She adjusted her glasses, glanced at the heading, then at me, then at my driver's license. "Let's see what the book says," she replied. We began with the document itself. Data is where schemes forget to breathe. Linda read off the Social Security number printed under my name and paused. "Please confirm your last four." I did. She read mine back from the form off by one digit. She moved to the address line sounding out my street. 2 T's, she asked. 1, I said. She circled both items lightly as if not to bruise the paper and requested my ID again. "We'll cross-check against the log." She drew a heavy leather-bound book from a lower drawer and opened it with both hands. The pages had the faint ripple of humidity and use. "What date is printed on your copy?" she asked. I told her. She turned to that week, then to the day, then to the hour stamped on the scan. I watched her finger track each line the way you follow a hymn you know by heart. 2 weddings, she said softly, and a refinance. Her finger landed on the exact minute the form claimed I appeared. A blank line looked back at us. "If I had notarized this, your name would be here," Linda said, tapping the space where ink should have lived, "and your thumbprint would be next to it. I require it for powers." The room went very quiet in my head. It wasn't shock, not anymore. It was the kind of quiet you feel when a puzzle piece clicks and the picture stops lying. I asked if I could photograph the page. With the book closed over the details of others, she said, "Your slot only." We arranged a folder to block neighboring names. I took the photo, then another hand, steady breath even. "Would you like a certified statement?" she asked. "Yes," I said, stating no notarization, recorded for the presented POA on that date and time. She wrote it out in careful block letters, stamped it, and signed beneath the seal. I paid the fee in cash. She made me a duplicate for my records. We did not speak about intentions or family. We spoke in dates and numbers and whether the copier had enough toner. It felt like standing on concrete after days of mud. In the hallway, I called Maura. "Wrong digit on my SSN," I said. "Street misspelled. No entry in the log. I have a certified no record statement and a photo of the blank line." Maura's exhale carried both satisfaction and restraint. "That voids the POA for carrier purposes," she said. "I'll ask them to freeze the file now and flag the payment department. Send the packet immediately subject line, named insured disputes POA evidence." The annex had a public workstation with a flatbed scanner that liked to complain. I fed each page under its lid, Linda's statement, the circled discrepancies, my license, the cropped photo of the empty slot with timestamp visible. I saved them as a single PDF, renamed it cleanly, and emailed it to the carrier and to Maura. Then I checked my outbox and took a picture of the screen with my phone, a habit I'd picked up after Emmett died. Trust the system and keep your own record. I sent Joanne a text that said exactly what it needed to say, and nothing more. County certifies no notarization. At the time your document states, insurer reviewing. Keep originals. Do not destroy. I did not add please or why. I've given my son enough words over the years to stock a library. Today, paper would do the talking. On my way back to the car, I passed a young couple standing under the live oak, holding hands, the woman balancing a folder like a fragile cake. A photographer posed them by the steps. The groom-to-be laughed the way my boy used to loose, and sure, I didn't envy them. I blessed them in my head. May your signatures be honest. May your witnesses show up. May your paperwork hold when life floods. In the driver's seat, I placed Linda's certified statement on top of my folder the way you set a roof beam. I called Maura back and asked for the escrow officer's number. You'll likely hear from an adjuster first. She said, but yes. Let's bring escrow into the conversation. Money follows paper. I looked at the embossed seal catching the light and thought, so does respect. By 2 o'clock, the air had turned warm enough to rattle the cicadas in the trees. I cracked the window and let them sing around me while I wrote a short list across a Post-it stuck to the folder's edge. Adjuster call, ask badge and reference. Escrow confirm, payee lock. Bank freeze any external deposit attempts. Church accept certified mail. It steadied me to see the tasks lined up in a row like fence posts after a storm. When the ground moves, you build a line and stand inside it. Before I pulled out, I opened my notebook and wrote one sentence in the center of the page, paper beats performative. Then smaller beneath it, and I will not be erased by anyone's shortcut. I closed the cover, touched the crease where pages meet, and headed toward the next office where the money waits for the right name. The call found me under the live oaks outside the church office papers in order and my name steady in my mouth. I stepped into a slice of shade as the number flashed unknown. This is Laci Tate, I answered, named insured for the property on Maple Ridge. I laid the county's certified statement on top of my folder and waited. This is Jazz with claims, a measured voice said. Am I speaking with Ms. Tate? You are, I said. I can verify anything you need. I also have documentation showing the power of attorney used on my file is invalid wrong. Social security digit, misspelled street, and no record in the notary's log. I did not hurry the words. All right, he said. I heard keys. We'll place a hold on disbursement while we validate authority. Could you email what you have? I can, I said. And I did packet E1 with the clerk's statement, the circled errors, and the logbook photo. We're paused. Jazz confirmed. Next will involve your mortgage servicer. Your policy includes a mortgagee clause funds, payable only to the named insured and mortgagee. Escrow will need to sign before anything moves. I know the clause I said, and I repeated it back to him word for word until it settled into the call. He placed Rowan Skakel, the escrow officer, on a 3-way line. Rowan's voice held paper and deadlines. I stated my name and address again. We reviewed the claim number, the hold notice, and the county certification number from the notary office. Given this, Rowan said escrow will not release funds under a disputed authority, will require reinspection and updated payee controls, listing Ms. Tate as the signer. Agreed, Jazz said. I'll send an email summary. Please include me, I added, and note that I will attend the reinspection at my property. Noted, he said. 2 emails arrived before I re-entered the church office, claim hold placed, and escrow pending documentation. I replied, all with Packet 2 dashboard photos from Joranne and Avery's study and the neighbor's doorbell clip hash. I wrote nothing extra. Next came the bank. The lost draft department greeted me with a robot. After 2 menus, a human answered. I verified myself and asked for a flag, do not release until named insured presence, ID at branch. She typed, read it back, added the date. I scheduled tomorrow's visit. Money follows paper. Paper follows name. On my way to the car, I stopped by the HOA window and requested a printed notice of the flood advisories issued for my street. The clerk slid a sheet through the slot. Dull proof wins. I added it to Packet No. 3 with a staple I pressed flat with my thumb. I called Maura from the sidewalk. I told her the hold was in place, escrow aligned, and the bank instructed. Good, she said. Keep the tone factual. The reinspection will turn this from argument into measurement. Science over feelings. That suits me, I said. I sent Joranne a courtesy text insurer and escrow paused routing pending reinspection. Please preserve all originals. I will attend re-inspection at my property, he replied. Noted. Inside the church, late light slanted through the glass. I opened my folder and saw a spine-hold email escrow, email, banknote, HOA printout. I wrote tomorrow's list on a sticky branch, visit moisture meter photos of wiring updated contents list. The afternoon thinned into quiet work. I renamed every file with the same beginning Tate claim, so no one could claim confusion later. I checked the batteries in my flashlight and camera. I packed gloves, a mask, and a small tape measure. No speeches, only the tools that tell the truth in inches and beeps. Hunger tapped my shoulder. I ate a ham sandwich from the church fridge with a note in the jar for the pantry fund. The bread tasted like a normal day. I let it. I laid out tomorrow's clothes in the back seat, clean jeans, a long-sleeve shirt that won't snag on drywall, and old boots that survive the water. I set 2 alarms, printed my ID, and tucked bus fare by my keys in case the car balked. At 4, Jaz called back with a time window. Re-inspection tomorrow between 9 and noon. The adjuster will bring a moisture meter and photograph the electrical. You'll be present. I will, I said. Please make sure the file reflects that I am the point of contact. It does, he said. Ms. Tate, I'll email the appointment confirmation now. The confirmation chimed into my inbox with a subject line I liked more than I expected. Appointment Tate Reinspection. I walked to the sanctuary before closing time and sat in the last pew. Sun found the stained glass and lifted color across the floor. I am not much for speeches, but I know a vow when I hear one I would see this through without raising my voice, and I would not let anyone file my life while I slept in a car again. As I locked up my papers, the phone buzzed with a message from the bank confirming tomorrow's appointment. I took a picture of the screen. I slid Emmett's ledger back into my bag and touched the frayed corner he used to worry with his thumb when the numbers were tight and the month was long. Evening drifted over Klein. I stepped outside and breathed the post-storm air. My folder had become a backbone. If someone tried to bend it, it would spring back because every page had a witness and every witness had a date. Tomorrow, the meter would chirp in my ruined hallway, and the numbers would speak louder than anyone's version of me. Eldon Rader and contractor Travis Cooley were at the curb when I pulled up. The air still smelled of wet drywall. I shouldered the warped door. It scraped the threshold. I stepped aside and let them go first. If today was about truth, I'd stay quiet. Eldon clicked his body camera and spoke the address, date, and time. He asked if I was Laci, the insured. I said yes and kept my folder zipped. He circled the living room and dining area where the carpet had dried in a buckled wave. I stood in each doorway, hands behind my back like a witness. In the hallway, he unfolded a moisture meter. The screen woke blue. He pressed the prongs into the baseboard. It chirped high reading. Travis called out numbers and Eldon repeated them for the record. At the study doorway, the meter turned to a steady alarm. Water had sat there longest. My throat tightened, then let go. Let the numbers speak. We reached the tan line where water had stood. I laid a ruler against the wall so the lens could read what the eye might doubt. 32 inches. I did not touch the stain. I stepped out of frame. In the kitchen, he shot under sink panels and toe kicks. Travis rapped sheetrock with his knuckles. It thudded like stale bread. Travis removed a faceplate from an outlet and pulled out damp insulation. You'll need to demo back to clean studs, he said. Eldon logged categories as if seating guests. Mitigation, demolition, electrical rebuild, contents. Each word landed with the dry weight of a checkbox. I could see the form reassembling the house without sentiment. We inventoried the rooms. I read from the notebook I started the morning after the water fell sofa bookcase. 3 shelves of cookbooks, Emmett's armchair with the dime in the left cushion flap. Eldon photographed tagged cereals in the tier where the dime would no longer hide. In the bedroom, he took stills from each corner. Clock face, precise. Outside, Travis crouched by the foundation and traced the grade with a pencil. Backflow at the low point, he said. Eldon filmed the crawlspace vents. I held the flashlight, keeping my phone clock visible when he asked for time marks. Ants had found the wet wood. They worked without drama. Loss is repetition. By the steps, Eldon paused. Initial proof of loss, he asked. I met his eye. I never filed one. A dispute is open. The power of attorney used in my name was invalidated by the county wrong Social Security digit, no notary record. He held still, then said into the mic, possible unauthorized submission noted. The words felt cool as water on a burn. He summarized at the hood of the truck while we drank paper cups of coffee. Category 3, intrusion. Electrical impacted. Contents affected. Recommend reissue to named insured pending documentation. He read, back then asked me to sign the attendance line. I signed to confirm I had been present, not to bless the number they would land on. We cleaned our boots on the grass and shook hands. No speech, no ceremony. I watched them drive away and stood in the quiet. The house no longer felt like a failure on my part. It felt like evidence, exact, legible, stubborn. I locked the scraped door behind me. The click sounded like the end of testimony. On the way to the post office, I stopped at a red light where a church marquee scrolled flood relief hours. I touched Emmett's ledger on the passenger seat. Paper brought me this far. Paper would carry me the rest of the way. At the USPS counter, I slid my license under the glass and filed a change of address and a mail hold to my new P.O. box. The clerk checked my signature twice, stamped the forms, and handed me the receipts like tickets to a safer place. Anything already in the stream will route to the box, she said. I set the receipts in front of the certified notary statement building the spine of my folder. Under the flag outside, I called Maura and left a message. Re-inspection completed. USPS change filed. She texted back, good. Tonight draw a clean boundary at dinner. You set the terms. I looked at the time and at my hands steady on the wheel. I could set terms. I drove by my house once more. The gutters held dull strips of leaves against a blue sky. Cicadas warmed up like small engines. Truth had moved forward today out of my mouth and into their system. That kind stays. At a gas station, I bought ice and a bottle of water for the cooler in the trunk. Small logistics keep a person brave. I wrote a sentence in my notebook, the one I would carry to their table. Please hand me any mail or checks addressed to me. All claim communication must come directly to the named insured. I did not practice the tone. The sentence would do the work the way the meter had done its work, the way the clerk's stamp had done hers. By the time the light went gold on the storefronts, a quiet center had settled in. Being a mother trained me to keep lists and keep my voice steady when others' voices rose. I had mistaken that training for consent. It was not consent, it was capacity. Tonight I would use it to hold a boundary and nothing more. I turned the car toward the neighborhood where the sprinklers run on schedule, and the doorbell can be silenced with a tap. If numbers could defend me at my house, a single sentence would defend me at their table. I put my folder on the seat beside me like a companion and drove into the evening ready to choose each word and leave the rest unsaid. Evening lay flat over their brick when I walked up the path with one folder. The sprinklers were done. Beads clung to azaleas. I rang once. When the latch turned, I said, "Let's sit at the table," and chose the chair with my back to the window so I wouldn't watch myself. 3 plates waited, but 1 placemat was missing. I set the folder in the center and set my hands on either side. Lemon cleaner rose from the wood. Joranne brought water. Avery lit a candle and watched the flame as if it might decide for us. I thanked them and kept my voice level. 2 things I said. My mail comes to me, and access ends tonight accounts portals. Anything with my name. I placed USPS slips between the plates. These are filed. Forward anything already in the stream. The word why had stopped serving me days ago. I didn't use it. Avery folded her hands. We were helping. It got complicated, she said. Complexity is not consent, I answered. Joranne looked down. The candle's shadow moved. The house hummed like an inn. I opened the folder and slid out a page. Proof of loss received at 12:07 yesterday, I read. I was in a parking lot then. Another page, the county certification. No record of any notarization by me on the date shown. I didn't ask them to respond. Paper doesn't need applause. My phone buzzed. A neighbor had forwarded a screenshot from the neighborhood chat. On it, Avery's name sat above a sentence, "We want privacy. No room for her here." The words were clean as a white tile and just as cold. The timestamp matched the evening I left their porch. I read the line aloud once evenly without looking up. Then I saved the image to the same album as the dashboard screenshots and turned the phone face down. Heard as information. Handled correctly, it becomes clarity. I let the sentence be that and nothing else. Tonight is boundaries, not blame, I said. You will forward every mail piece, email, or text about my claim. You will keep originals, and you will not speak in my name again. I could hear my mother in my Cadence classroom firm. Some inherit jewelry. I inherited tone. Joran traced the rim of his glass. Mom, we panicked, he said. We thought it would be easier to just handle it. Avery added, we wanted you safe. I answered, you chose comfortable, not safe. From here, choose lawful. The sentence sat between us like a fourth-place setting. Avery slid a sheet toward me, edges square. This clarifies what you want, she said. You can sign here so we all have peace. I didn't touch it. Send it through the carrier, I said. If my signature is needed, it will arrive by the proper channel. The candle steadied. Silence shaped the next minute. We could fill it with old rolls or let it be new. I let it be new. So, then. If any check arrives naming me, I said text a photo and hold it for pickup. If it names anyone else, note the sender and leave it unopened. Joran nodded. A nod can be a contract. We ate grilled chicken asparagus rice without ceremony. I tasted lemon and salt and the echo of a house where decisions had been made without me. When I finished, I rinsed my plate and set it in the rack beside the cup I washed on the first night. Dignity can be a small chore done cleanly. Back at the table, I pinched the candle out, heat touching skin just enough to prove fire is real. Thank you for the water, I said. Next contact will be logistics only. I lifted my folder. The room looked exactly as it had when I arrived. That was the point. On the porch, I listened to the street settle into crickets and tires on wet pavement. My phone chimed a bank reminder for tomorrow's appointment. Ink and policy would do what sentiment never could. I texted Maura dinner done. Boundaries set. She replied with a check mark. I walked to the car and set the folder on the passenger seat. In the dome light, I filed the group chat image under a new label and backed it up. Then I put the phone away and sat with my hands on the wheel until the quiet inside matched out. A person can choose their weather. Driving out of the cul-de-sac, I passed the neighbor's doorbell camera that saw me the first night. I imagined it catching me now, same shoulders, different ledger. Some witnesses need nothing from you. The roads were still damp where the streetlights pooled. I took the long way to the church lot and parked under my usual lamp. I checked the order USPS slips email header county certification screenshot and closed the folder with a flat palm. The edges made a neat stack like a small roof. When I powered down the night, folded around the hood. I locked the doors and leaned back until the headrest found the soft place at the base of my skull. I thought of Emmett's ledger and the dime in his chair. We once saved little things without thinking. This year, I am saving my name on purpose. By morning, a clerk will ask me to spell it for the check, and I will. Tonight, I say it to myself and let it settle. Laci Tate, named insured, mother. Those words aren't interchangeable, and none are other. I watched the car ceiling until the lines of the day unwound. Outside, a freight train sounded off the kind that threads suburbs without stopping. I pictured my street drying board-by-board patient as a quilt on a line now. I slept with the folder on my chest, not as armor, but as a reminder when someone tries to write you out, you answer with ink that cannot be mistaken for kindness. Ticket B092 blinked above the teller row, and I stood with my folder balanced like a tray. The branch smelled of carpet cleaner and ink. Named insured verification for a flood loss draft, I told the clerk when I reached the counter. Her tag read, Candace. She smiled the practiced smile of someone who knows where the forms live. 2 forms of ID, she said. I set down my driver's license and passport card edges squared to the glass. She scanned compared signatures and pulled my file. On her screen, a note from claims and escrow sat in bold, release only to Laci Tate in person. Candace nodded once. Paper beats rumor. Policy beats memory. She scrolled again and frowned. There's a queued pickup, she said quietly. Third party. I let the quiet hold. I had learned that silence is sometimes an instruction. Let me get Miguel, she added, already waving the supervisor forward. He arrived with the slow authority of a man used to closing loops. Miguel read the note, then the email chain from Joss and Rowan. Cancel the third-party release, he said, tapping keys. Hold remains until Ms. Tate endorses in person. He printed a confirmation, slid it to me, and initialed the bottom. I placed it into the right pocket of my folder where confirmations live. By the lobby ficus, I called Rowan on speaker. Escrow here, he answered. We received Eldon's reinspection summary and the carrier's hold. We're revising the payee line to Laci Tate and the mortgagee only. I repeated the words back so they would exist in both of our voices. He emailed a reissue ticket number while we spoke. I forwarded the ticket to Jazz with a subject line that said exactly what was true. Payee correction named insured plus mortgagee. No adjectives, no thunder. The reply came within minutes, acknowledged. Reissue in process. A courier stepped to the counter asking for the Menendez file. Candace checked, then shook her head. No release to third party on this claim, she said professional as a level line. He glanced at me without interest and left. I watched my paperwork instead of his back. Some victories should not be chased. Miguel returned with a provisional draft for me to review, not to sign. On final reissue, endorsement will be required here, he said, highlighting a line where my name sat first. I read every field aloud: property address, claim number, loss date, the mortgagee clause that had saved me twice already. Looks right, I said and handed it back. At the copier, I scanned the override, the reissue ticket, and the email exchange into a single PDF named Release Controls Day 5, then sent it to Maura and to my P.O. box. I copied myself because I have learned to be my own witness. I took a breath that felt like room temperature and not like weather. Outside, the day was bright enough to lift the edges of everything. I texted Duran Bank and escrow confirmed release only to named insured. Forward claim mail to my P.O. box as agreed. No pickup authorized under your household. I reread it for temperature, then hit send. He replied with a single, okay. Sometimes a monosyllable is progress. At a diner down the street, I ordered coffee and a soup and laid my ledger open beside the plate. I tallied nights I hadn't paid for because the church found me a spare bed, listed what remained, contractor bids contents, list rebuild inspection utilities. Order is a kind of shelter. I wrote the word shelter and boxed it. An email from Jazz arrived at 3:21 reissue, authorized pending signatures. Expect draft tomorrow. I forwarded it to myself, to Maura, to Rowan, then closed the thread so the fact could rest. In the reflection of the diner window, I looked like any woman counting change and hours. It felt correct. I walked to the branch again to drop a thank you note at the counter, a small habit that reminds people you saw them. Candace tucked it under her keyboard. We'll call when the envelope arrives, she said. The lobby speakers played a saxophone cover of a song that used to make Emmett laugh. I let the memory pass through without setting a chair for it. On the way to the church, I swung by the post office and checked the new box. A Red Cross mailer waited inside, addressed to me by name. I kept the envelope closed, proof that the system could learn. Outside heat lifted off the asphalt, and the world smelled like pennies and rain. In the lot, I made Packet 04, the supervisor override the payee revision ticket, the courier denial noted by time, and a photo of my 2 IDs. The PDF looked like a spine-orderly load-bearing. I saved it twice, then backed up the day's photos. Redundancy is not fear, it is carpentry. Evening pulled across the roof lines. I sat in the car with the windows cracked and the folder open on the seat. Somewhere in this suburb, a caption called a room a sanctuary. Tomorrow a check would call my house a loss and my name the owner. Both would be true and one would matter more. Before I left, an HOA bulletin pinged Thursday cleanup would meet under pavilion lights. I replied I'd bring trash bags and water. Standing with neighbors, not speeches, would be enough. Shade plastic chairs help people tell truth. I turned the key. The engine answered like a trained animal. On the dash, the time clicked over to exactly 4:30. Tomorrow, I said to no one we opened the envelope properly. I signaled merged and kept to the right-hand lane, a habit and a choice. The pavilion lights clicked on under the live oaks, warm beads over folding tables stacked with FEMA flyers, mold guides and iced tea urns. I set my folder at center table and smoothed its edge. Maribel, our HOA chair, gave me a nod, the kind reserved for people who show up with their work done. The evening smelled like cut grass and citronella. A navy windbreaker paused at the curb. The courier checked a clipboard and asked a volunteer for Ms. Laci Tate, then followed a pointing finger to me. "Are you Laci Tate?" he said. "Yes," I answered, by name and by right. He compared 2 IDs, scanned a barcode, and made a neat mark on his screen. The envelope felt neither heavy nor light, just correct. People kept talking about sandbags and bleach. The world did not tilt because my name sat on paper. That was the point. I broke the seal and slid the lost draft onto the plastic table. "Payee line," Maribel asked, stepping close so she could record the fact, not the feeling. I rotated the check. She read for the minute's voice even into her lapel mic. "Payable to Laci Tate and mortgagee." I kept the check flat with 2 fingers like a map that finally matched the road. Neighbors murmured good wishes. I didn't sign yet. Paper doesn't need applause. It needs custody. I slid the draft halfway back into its sleeve so no wind could flirt with it. Joanne and Avery arrived late, breath thin from a quick walk across the grass. Avery found a tone shaped like helpfulness. We coordinated the early filing. Unauthorized doesn't become authorized because it's early. I said level. Joanne watched the table grain. "Janelle," I said to the neighbor who had shared the clip, "would you tell what you saw on Tuesday?" Janelle stepped forward without theater. At about 5:08 p.m. Tuesday, she said my doorbell camera recorded Ms. Tate at her son's porch with 2 bags. I heard the phrase, "We want privacy." That's all. She handed Maribel a printout. No blame, only distance and words. Avery's jaw flickered. "We meant well," she said, quick as a bandage. "Meaning doesn't move money or signatures," I answered. I lifted the certified notary statement, the book that didn't hold my name. Maribel read the title and certification number into her recorder, then slid a copy into the HOA resources folder. Facts can be neighbors, too. Maribel tapped her phone. Before we dispersed, she said, "I'll read a draft email. Clear, practical subject, post-flood aid, by name and by right. Dear neighbors, resources will be routed under legal names on deeds and policies. Please do not submit on someone's behalf without documented authority." She glanced at me. "May I attach your agency list and the mortgagee clause?" "Yes," I said. Plain text so people can copy the sentence that protects them. My phone buzzed once. Janelle had forwarded the banner screenshot from a small group chat, the line that said, "No room for her here." I showed only Maribel. She noted private message, confirmed boundary language, and gave the phone back. We didn't circulate it. The courier waited patient as a post. "Do you require a witness to endorsement?" I asked. "A photo of the signed draft is sufficient," he said. "I'll sign here," I said, "and keep custody." I signed in the measured hand I once taught Joanne in 1st grade. The courier snapped a verification photo and re-scanned the barcode. Maribel logged endorsed by named insured at Pavilion 7:04 p.m. I slid the check into its sleeve and then into my folder the way you return a photograph to an album. Avery tried again. We were scared she'd be unsafe. "You chose comfortable?" I said not safe. "From here, choose lawful." Joanne finally spoke small and unadorned. "What can we do now?" "Forward any mail that bears my name," I said. "Save originals. If you want to help, do it on invoices, not intentions. The rebuild needs hands that carry lumber and checks that clear. Pick which kind of help you are." He nodded. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't nothing. Maribel drafted an HOA email to the block resources under legal names, misuse reported to the carrier, plus a short checklist for elders. Phones chimed as it went out. We stacked chairs as the sky darkened. David pressed a contractor's card into my hand. "I trust this one," he said. "I'll get 3 bids," I answered. When the pavilion thinned, I turned to Joran again. "Tomorrow is tape measures and line items," I said. "No speeches." "I'll meet you there," he said. Avery studied the grass. I walked out under the oaks with my folder against my ribs. The air held a stubborn Texas warmth. At the sidewalk, I texted Maura a photo of the sleeve delivered and recorded. HOA resources sent under my name. She replied, "Proud of your process." I buckled the folder into the passenger seat out of habit. Across the lot, Joran stood with his hands in his pockets while Avery stared at her phone. They were a puzzle they'd solve without me. I started the engine and pulled out slow, doing the small, lawful things that hold bigger ones in place. Tomorrow, tape measures and line items would decide what walls return and who earns a place inside them. By 8 a.m., the gate latch stuck from silt and memory. I worked it once, then again, and the yard let me in. The slab was chalked in pale dust where walls would return. I set a folding chair by the front steps, opened my legal pad to a clean page, "Rebuild people I can trust," and wrote the date. A breeze carried the faint sweetness of wet pine. I breathed it in like a vow and waited for tape measures to begin talking. Rex arrived first, glossy brochure in hand, sunglasses tucked into his collar like a badge. "Heard you move fast," he said. Flashing a grin meant to close deals. He mentioned Joran within a minute, called me ma'am, the way salesmen do when they want your guard down, and slid a printed estimate across my lap. The numbers gleamed. So did the fees. I read silently. "Friends and family discount," he said, tapping the total. I underlined mobilization $8,000 and the stacked percentages below. 10% admin, 15% project management, and a vague coordination charge that sounded like paying for a handshake. "I'll need line items," I said, "and lien waivers from any sub who touches a wall." His grin thinned. "We usually skip waivers for family," he said. "Not anymore," I answered. He paced the rooms, narrated confidence, and left a card with a gold crest. After he pulled away, the slab felt calmer, as if a wind had shifted. Maritza rolled up second boot's dusty hair in a scarf clipboard already smudged with pencil. No brochure. She had a measuring wheel and a scope sheet with neat columns replace salvage discard. "You want straight to studs and back," she said, eyes on the chalked lines. Not on me. We walked clockwise. She called out footage labeled moisture-damaged wiring and noted code for GFCI replacements. When I mentioned waivers, she nodded before I finished. Unconditional per draw. We signed the sub-sign, Eve. Hollis arrived last, a quiet man with a dog-eared code book and a carpenter's square that had seen decades. He studied the hallway waterline, then crouched to check the sill plates. "We'll make it square," he said, "and we'll pull permits so it stays that way." His number was modest, his handwriting plain. He didn't sell, he described. By late morning, I had 3 estimates, 3 voices, and 1 decision forming. I stepped into the shade and called Rowan at escrow. 3 draws, I said, tied to inspections demo and dry-out rough-in finish. Funds release only with unconditional lien waivers from every sub on each stage. He liked the clarity. 10 minutes later, an addendum hit my inbox with language that felt like a lock clicking. I printed 2 copies at the church office and slid 1 into each bid packet. "No waiver, no draw," I told. Rex called back before lunch. "We can cut the mobilization," he said, "if we start today. Email revised line items and your standard waivers per milestone," I replied. Silence. "We'll pass," he said finally. I wrote. Also know beside his name and let the page absorb it. I sat on the steps with a peanut butter sandwich and the low thrum of traffic on the cross street. Maritza's revised scope arrived first tight legible with permit fees, listed materials separated from labor, and contingencies capped. Hollis sent a simple schedule and a copy of his insurance certificate. I sent both to Rowan with the addendum attached and the subject line award by named insured. The church office line blinked. Deirdre from the grants desk spoke gently, all competence and zero pity. A micro grant could cover 3 motel weeks and a month of storage payable to the named applicant me. Paperwork, not charity, I said. Exactly, she answered. I filled the form signed under my own name and felt a room inside my chest, steady. A text from Joran arrived like a pebble tossed at a window. Rex could have saved time, he wrote. I sent a screenshot of the addendum and nothing more. The rule was the message time isn't the measure. Signatures are. By 3 decisions, we're clean. I awarded demo and dry out to Maritza's crew framing and rough in to Hollis, with electrical folded into his schedule. I copied Rowan requested draw calendars and set tomorrow's start for 7 a.m. The house would come apart in a way that made room for return. Before I left, I walked each room, slowly touching door frames as if checking pulses. In the bedroom, I found a scrap of wallpaper clinging above the 32-inch waterline, a pale blue vine Emmett and I had argued about when we hung it. He said it was too fussy. I said it made the room kinder. I pressed the paper flat and let it spring back. Grief didn't need to be loud to be true. At dusk, Maritza's crew taped plastic to protect what could be saved and stacked fans by the entry. Hollis marked studs with a pencil small X's where wires would snake and outlets would sit. The slab no longer looked like loss. It looked like a blueprint. Back at the motel, I set 2 alarms labeled the first demo waivers, the second permits IDs, and laid out clothes on the chair like blueprints for a morning. I checked my P.O. box key twice and slid it into my shoe so I wouldn't forget. At sunrise, I locked the gate. The latch still fought me and then gave. In the car, I filed the signed addendum, the chosen bids, and Deirdre's grant letter into the folder that had become a spine. Tomorrow, saws would hum, waivers would earn their ink, and walls would learn my name again. Saws woke the morning like a steady choir. At 7 on the dot, Maritza's crew zipped on masks and sliced the first line through the ruined drywall. I signed the unconditional lien waiver for Draw 1 with a hand that didn't shake. When the panels came down, the house exhaled what it had held sour damp and a week of stale argument about my name. Fans roared. Sun threaded the studs. Fresh air learned my rooms again. Hollis snapped a blue chalk line neat as a hymn-setting new sill plates, square and true. Inspector at 2, he said pencil behind his ear. Draw after sign-off, I nodded. Paper first, then nails. That rhythm carried me farther than apology. My phone buzzed while I stood in a kitchen without walls. Subject line, audit findings. Submission validity. Jazz had written it. I breathed once before tapping. The carrier's audit said a proof of loss had been submitted via non-authorized email. Signature mismatch confirmed. Reissue only to the named insured and mortgagee. No flourish, no lecture-only policy, stating what I knew, floods erase walls, not names. I forwarded the notice to escrow and slid the phone back in my pocket. Outside, the dumpster thudded. Inside, I laid a hand on a stud and felt labor traveling through wood, like a heart beneath ribs. By noon, the city inspector signed the rough mitigation. Rowan replied, Draw 2 queued upon receipt of lien waivers. I scanned them on the tailgate printer Maritza kept in her truck, handed copies to her supers, and filed the originals behind a tab labeled Built by Fax. When process becomes habit, panic has no purchase. Joran stepped into the doorway with a case of water and an unsure smile. He looked younger in dust. It's really happening, he said. It is, I answered. If you want to help pick up the receipts and take photos of every delivery label, we match invoices nightly. He nodded, grateful for a job that required honesty, not history. In the late afternoon, Avery came alone, hands empty, shoulders low. She didn't cross the threshold. I was scared, she said, and wrong. The fans filled the pause. I accept your apology, I answered. Going forward, speak only in your own name. No sermon, no tally of harm. Boundaries are doors that swing. She nodded, eyes shining, and left the way she came, quiet, without a performance. That evening, I opened my P.O. box and met a small avalanche of redirected envelopes, every one addressed to me. I sorted policy letters from utility credits and set aside Pastor Glenn's card, praying strength, not noise. On the way back, I bought 3 rolls of painter's tape for a purpose no crew had to approve. Weeks gathered themselves into a clean pattern. Studs dried, wiring tucked in tidy runs, drywall lifted seams, feathered primer turned rooms to pale promise. Hollis rehung the front door square. It closed with the kind of click that sounds like safety. Maritza measured the last baseboard and grinned. At the closet, I drew a thin pencil line 32 inches up the watermark and wrote the date inside the wall where only I would see it. Some memories deserve privacy. Rowan's final email arrived the same morning. The cabinet pulls went in escrow, release, complete, file closed. Jazz followed with the carrier's audit summary for my records and a dry thank you for cooperating. I printed both, slid them into packet C5, and felt an exhale that belonged to me. Pastor Glenn stopped by in work boots and said a prayer that didn't try to make sense of what water does. He thanked the hands, the paper trail, and the light through clean windows. We bowed our heads between ladders and buckets. Amen sounded like a level finding true. I set my keys on the new counter and felt their weight, same metal, different meaning. Mail landed where it should. Money flowed only through forms with my signature first. When the refrigerator hummed, the house answered roll call. Joran lingered on the porch at dusk. "Can we start over?" he asked. "We can start honest," I said. He looked past me at the straight seams, the calm paint, the quiet line hidden in the closet. "I'll earn it," he added. "Good," I said. "Bring tacos tomorrow. Crews eat better than apologies." Avery texted a single line that night. "Thank you for not humiliating me." I replied, "Thank you for choosing lawful." Sometimes an ending is 2 sentences that finally use the right names. I slept in my own bedroom the first Friday of week 6. Rain ticked briefly on the eaves and moved on. The house didn't flinch. Before dawn, I walked room to room with a mug of coffee touching corners, like counting blessings, square level, dry air. At the closet, I pressed my palm over the hidden mark and whispered, "Not erased, recorded." On my way out to meet Maritza for final walkthroughs, I stopped at the mailbox. My name on the metal looked ordinary again. Ordinary is a victory that needs no applause. I slipped a letter to the insurer inside a formal acknowledgement of claim closure and raised the flag. I locked the door behind me, turned the keys in my hand, and felt at last the click of a boundary that held. Silence was never weakness. Silence was the path that let policy say what pride could not, and paper carried patiently became shelter. I opened the windows and let the quiet in. Floods took my walls. They never took my name. Getting the right one back on every document turned a house into a home. After the flood, I learned this: quiet isn't weakness, it's a tool. Paper trails clear boundaries, and a steady voice can protect a life better than anger ever will. If you're facing family pressure or red tape, write things down, ask for names, and keep what belongs to you in your name. Choose lawful over loud dignity, over drama. What would you have done at that door? Have you ever had to reclaim your place with facts, not fights? If this story touched you, drop a 1 or your city below. If it didn't tell me why and where you watched, want more true, hopeful stories, please subscribe to the channel.